Right. Wish you all a very good morning. So I think everybody can hear me properly. Children, can all hear me? Puta? Vibu? Oshani? Onita? Sean? Duniti? Can all hear me? Right, great. Good. So now at this moment we are in the fourth competency, right? Last week we started it. And today, right, we are moving to the second session, right, on introduction to accounting. Okay. So, Puta, last week we recognized a number of things related with the subject of accounting. Let me show, right? Let me go. Now, Puta, last week, okay, in the last session, I told you that the subject of accounting, right, I told you it is a language. Okay. It's a language, right? Then I told you, if you are learning a new language, okay, you have to recognize, right, a few things, right? Let's say English. If I can remember, when we were learning the subject of English, right, we had to use, right, number of new things. For an example, we had to learn a vocabulary. It means new words. Okay, new words or new terms. Okay, and they are right. Apart from that, we had to learn the grammar. Grammar means the rules, right? So I told you, a few minutes ago, I told you that the subject of accounting is also a new language. Okay. Therefore, in this lesson, right, and also in a few lessons further, we are discussing about a number of new terms. Alut vachan igana ganna. And apart from that, we are learning new rules. Listen to me, right? This language is much simpler than any other languages in the world. Do you know the reason? Because this is a universal language, right? Universal language. Everybody uses it. Every country uses it. Okay, Buddha? So in today's session also, I'm going to introduce a set of new words related with this particular language. Can you remember the last thing or the last topic we discussed in the previous session? I told you, right? As a result of a transaction, we discussed about the outcomes of transactions and events. So I told you there are 5 outcomes. First one is assets, right? Liabilities, equity, income, and expenses. So today's session is starting with this point. And today also I'm ready with, right? This is the tutorial. I think you all are ready with the hard copies, Puta. But once again, don't bother about writing the notes now. If you can do it, right? But my advice is, now I'm going to publish the video in your group. I'm going to share the video. My advice is, right, you have to go through that recorded session. anytime you like. Any times you like. I told you during this month, because of these power failures, I'm going to leave the recording for entirely for right during April. I'm going to leave the particular recording. So you can watch that, right, at any times you like. Okay. So now what you do is just listen to the lecture. So today we are discussing a number of things. Everything, we have a few activities also, right? So let's start today's session with the presentation. presentation right. Let me start the presentation. This is Introduction to Accounting, Session 2. If you can remember, right. Last week, I told you that there are 5 outcomes of transactions. I think you all can remember this. I told you, as a result of transactions in a business, it creates assets. It generates liabilities. We can recognize some equity, right, of the business. Right? Sometimes the transactions generates income to the business, and also the expenses. Right? I think you all have studied them. Now, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce all these things, right? In fact, I'm going to define and describe what are these. Okay, so let's start the, wait a minute. Right. Assets. This is how the assets are defined. Okay, if you can write it. Otherwise, right, you can listen to the lecture. After that, you can copy it to your notes. Now listen to me. In defining assets, we are using number of new things, right? Number of valuable, right, points. It is, assets is always a resource. Listen to this. It's a resource. Assets is a resource, right? Assets is a resource, right? The resources, this is something very important, controlled by the business. Okay, resources controlled by the business as a result of a past transaction. These are the key points, and from which, look at this one, Puta, future economic benefits are expected to flow. Are we clear, Puta? Right now, in defining an asset, there are 3 key points. I'm going to discuss about that in the next slide also, but look at this one. First step is, asset is a resource controlled, okay, by the business. Right? So, but no one should say that assets should be owned. What is it? Assets should be controlled by the business. Okay, you have to be very, very careful when you describe or define something. And the next point, Puta, next point tells you it has to be acquired as a result of a past transaction. Okay, it has to be acquired as a result of a past transaction. And the next point, it tells you, right, it should generate future economic benefits. Okay, economic benefits. Right, Pudha? So this is how you describe or define an asset. What is it, Puthe? The resources controlled by the business as a result of a past transaction and from which future economic benefits are expected to flow to the business are called assets. So write this definition and highlight these key points in your tutorial. Okay. One student has sent me the answers, right? I think I told that to you, Pute. When you write a note, this is not an exam, no, Putha. Huh? This is your note. So the note has to be a colorful one. ඔක්කොම එක පාටින් ලියන්න එපා. ලිව්වත් කමක් නැහැ පුතා, පොඩ්ඩක් highlight කරගන්න. Do you know the reason? Right? Because everybody likes, right, colors. You and me both. Okay? So when you have written a note like that, right, it encourages you to read it again. Okay? So whenever you write a note, highlight the key points, underline, or you can use, right, red pen to write the important things. Okay, great. So I think everyone will follow this method from today onwards. Putha, we are moving to the next one. Give me a minute. All right. Puthe. That is characteristics of assets. I think you know what are they now. First characteristic is it has to be a result of a past transaction. Putha, now it has to be written here. Right? So the definition should be written here and the characteristics in here. First characteristic is, look at this one. It has to be a result of a past transaction. Second one, it should be controlled by the business. Once again, I repeat, no one should say it should be owned by the business, because it gives you a different meaning. What is it? It should be controlled by the business. I'm going to discuss all these things in detail today. And the third and the last point is, it should generate future economic benefits to the business. So all these 3 points were there in the definition. What is an asset? Asset is, right, anything which is economic resources, which is controlled by the business, acquired as a result of a past transaction, and which expects to generate future economic benefits towards the business. I think you are aware of that. Okay. Next, what do we mean by this point? Make මොකක්ද මේ කියන්නේ? Puta, wait a minute. Puta, give me a minute. There's a small problem in the presentation. I told you that it has to be a result of a past transaction. It was one characteristic. Now, what does it mean by that? Puta, that means, Pute, acquisition of the asset has to be done in the past. Okay, something very important. Let's say when you write, while you were traveling, I think you all can see the see the slide. Let's say, right, one day when you were traveling, you saw a motor vehicle. Or a motor vehicle, right? Motor vehicle, right? This is the motor vehicle that you saw. Right? It was in a car sale. Now, you are planning to purchase this, right? But still you have not purchased it. It means you have not acquired. Right? According to this motor vehicle cannot be recognized as an asset of your business because the acquisition has not been done yet. So the acquisition, that action has to be a past one, right? Acquisition of the asset has to be done in the past. That means what? Right, without acquiring an asset, look at this, you can't receive the control of the asset. Okay, now that means the business receives the control of the asset only after the acquisition. Something very simple. Without acquiring an asset, how we can control it? Impossible, no? So you should write this point as the answer for question. I think there is an activity, Puta, right? That should be written as the answer for this one. Okay, past event කියන එක නෑ නේද? හරි. Right. පුතේ මෙන්න මෙතන එක ලියා ගන්න පොඩ්ඩක්. මම මේක පොඩ්ඩක් note එක පොඩ්ඩක් එහෙම වෙලා තියෙනවා. Here you have to write this point should be written. Result of a past transaction means, right? You have to write this in that particular small space. Acquisition of the asset has to be done in the past. That means the business receives the control of the asset only after the acquisition. Okay, now, next point. It should be controlled by the business. Now, what do we mean by that? Now listen to me. මං ආයි පාරක් අර වාහනේ අඳිනවා. හරිද? පොඩ්ඩක් බලාගෙන ඉන්න පුතේ. Let's say, right, that this is your vehicle. That this is your vehicle, right? මේ පුතාගේ වාහනේ කියලා හිතන්න. ගෙදර තියෙන වාහනේ. Right? This is yours. And this is your neighbor's vehicle. Okay? This is your neighbor's vehicle. Right? This is your neighbor's motor vehicle. Right? Now, think and tell me, right? Think and tell me what becomes your asset. මම මෙහෙම ලියන්නම්කෝ. මට උත්තර දෙන්න. A or B. What can be recognized as your asset? Puta. Vehicle O, vehicle O, A or vehicle B. Vehicle A or vehicle B. What can be recognized as your asset? Janidu, exactly. What is it? It is your vehicle, vehicle A. Why is that? Yes, Duniti. Why vehicle become B does not recognize as an asset of your business? Can you all tell me? It's very simple. The only reason is you have no control over your neighbor's vehicle. Okay? This is the asset where you can think about controlling. Now, what is it? Puta, I'm going to erase this one. Since this is not asset, I'm going to erase this. Now look at this. I told you this is an asset. Puta, you can decide what to do with this. Right? Sometimes your parents, right, drops you at school. Okay, with the vehicle. Sometimes you go on trips. Sometimes, right, you go shopping. See, you can make decisions regarding the asset, how to use it. Am I clear with you, Buddha? Right? So that is the meaning of this characteristic. It should be controlled by the business. Are we clear? Controlled by the business. In your tutorial, I'm extremely sorry for the mistake, right? What do you mean by, right? What do you mean by, right? Yes. What do you mean by result of a past transaction? What do you mean by result of a past transaction of an asset? Extremely sorry, okay? What do you mean by result of a past transaction of an asset. Right? So for that particular part, Puta, you have to write the previous answer. This one. This one should be written as your answer. Acquisition of the asset has to be done in the past. I think you can understand, you can remember. That means the business receives the control of the asset only after the acquisition. Are we clear? Right. So we have moved to the next one, controllability. Then for the next question, this is going to be your answer. Okay, great. Next one, classification. Right? So Puta, this is the answer. How the assets are classified. Pute, look at this. Assets are classified under two arrangements. Number one, current assets. Right? You have to put number one here. Number one is current asset and number two is non-current assets. Once again, how do we classify the assets, Puta? First one, current assets. Second, non-current assets. Right? Now, let's see, right? What does it mean by the current asset? Then take up the definition එකක් මේක textbook එකේ ඔහොමම තියෙන definition එකක් පුතා පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න මම ලස්සනට කියලා දෙන්න. හරිද? Current assets. Okay. Current assets are the assets that are expected to be used, sold, or converted into cash in a short time period as 12 months. That means 1 year, no? In the ordinary activities of a business. Little bit complicated, right? Little bit complicated, right? So you have to right, remember the definitions, Puta, because they might be tested probably not in the first term, but in the second term. The second term examination. Look at this one. Let me explain it further. Make it මොකක්ද අපිට මේ කියන්නේ? Right? Puta, first one, it tells you that the current assets are expected to be used, sold, or converted into cash. These are the three important points. The current assets either should be used, or it has to be sold, or it should be converted into cash. In a short period, as 12 months in the ordinary activities of a business. Current assets are the assets that are expected to be used, sold, or converted into cash in a short time period as 12 months or 1 year in the ordinary activities of a business. Okay, so this is how you define, this is how you define current assets. Definition. Let's recognize some examples. Mama etanam putat examples ටිකක් දෙනවා අහගන්න. හරිද? What are the examples of current assets? Look at this. First one, මේව ටික ලියා ගන්න ඕන අතන. මේ ටික ලියා ගන්න. පළවෙනි එක, right? Stock. Or you can also say inventory. Stock or inventory. Number two, මේ අලුත් වචනයක්. මම කියවන අලුත් වචන ටිකක් තියෙනවායි කියලා පුතේ. Debtors. How to pronounce this? Not debtors, debtors. Okay, another current asset. Right? And number three, cash. Cash in hand. අතේ තියෙන සල්ලි. Number four, right? Cash at bank. Another example of a current asset. Now, let me give you a few additional things. If you like, you can write them down. Puta, later, not now, right? Later, we are learning a few more, right? Current assets. They are, මෙහෙවත් කියනවා පුතා, මේ නිකන් මතක තියාගන්න. Prepaid expenses. Prepaid expenses. It's a current asset. Better if you can write them, right? And the next one, තව එකක් තියෙනවා පුතා, right? Receivables. All these are recognized as the examples of current assets. That means all these items are either used, sold, or converted into cash within 12 months. I repeat, all these things are either used, sold, or converted into cash in a short period time like 12 months. First write the definition, then you can write the examples. Okay, children? So don't be afraid, right? I'm going to give the recording again. So go through this again and again, right? And the only thing is, Puta, my final target is, ultimate target is to give you a good pass, help you in obtaining a good pass. It's a very simple subject. It is not hard like, right, science, maths, and anything. It's a practical subject too. I think I told that to you previously. Because all of us, your parents, everyone is working with cash. They are earning cash and they spend it, right, for the needs of the family. So everybody works with cash. So therefore, this is the only subject which directly speaks about cash. I told you, no, although you engage in any type of a profession, a doctor, an engineer, right? Anybody, an accountant, right? So listen to me, everybody in the country, president, president, prime minister, all of them are working with, right, cash. It's a practical subject. It's a practical subject. So learn it nicely. Right, children? Great. Let's move to, right, the next slide. I'm going to erase the drawings. Right. Let's recognize the current assets. It's very simple. පොඩ්ඩක් මේක කියව ගන්න හැමෝම. මොකද්ද මේ current assets එකයි definition එකේ මොකද්ද තියෙන වෙනස? Can someone see? මේ තින්නේ current assets definition. Okay. Either you have written this, you have gone through this, and this is the definition of non-current assets. What is it? What is the difference? The difference is, right, this word. Right? No. Janidu, not expected. See? So if you can remember the definition of current assets, you can easily, right, recognize the definition of a non-current asset. But it tells you, non-current assets are the assets that are not expected to be used, sold, or converted into cash in a short time period as 12 months. That means 1 year. හරිද? පුතා මන්ට පොඩි definition එකක් දෙන්නද මේකට? මම මෙහෙමත් ඔයාලට මේකත් මේ විදිහට කියන්න පුළුවන්. Non-current assets are the assets. Okay. මේකත් කැමති නම් ලියා ගන්න. Assets, right, which cannot be identified as current assets, right, are called as non-current assets. assets which cannot be identified as current assets are called as non-current assets. Very simple, right? Now, let's write down a few examples. We have a lot of examples here. Number of examples are there. First one, first one, right? Land. Second, building. Buildings of the business. Then we have motor vehicles. Motor vehicles. Not only that, sometimes it may include machinery. Machinery, another non-current asset. Okay, and not only that, sometimes we have furniture. Furniture used by the business, right? The examples, right? Let me give you a few advanced examples here. This may include, non-current may include investments and fixed deposits. Right? Fixed deposits. Short term. But in all levels, we recognize the investments and fixed deposits under the non-current section, non-current asset section. So you can write these as your examples. And Putha, better write this definition too. Assets which cannot be identified as current assets are called or recognized as non-current assets of the business. We have defined assets. We have recognized the characteristics of an asset. Then we classified the assets, right? We defined current assets. I gave you a few examples. We defined non-current assets, and I have given you another example. Are we clear now? Great. So copy the note nicely. I told you, if you can, better to use number of right colors in your tutorial. Right, Puti? Great. And I want you to keep all these tutorials in correct order according to the session numbers. Right, Puti. Let me take you to the next slide. Liabilities. Now I told you we are describing all these things. So the first one is liabilities. Look at the definition. Look at this definition. It tells you, okay, liability is a present obligation. A liability. Present obligation. Right? Right, this is you. Right? Right. So we had school on, what was the last day we had school? Anyone? Right? 6th of April 2022. Right? You have forgotten to take your lunch box to school. Then we camp it here. Oya is calling in each name. Then Marvede Badagini. Then Mokodakarana, right? Then Ate Salit, Hitanako, Canti Meralati by Kelame, canteen have a Valati in other. Hitanako canteen Keralati. So on this date, right? Let's say that your friend may in Putagialu, right? Right? May in Agialu. You, right, lend some money from him. Let's say you ask for 100 rupees from your friend to purchase, right, the lunch. Lunch name break lunch. Now, right, now the school was closed on this date. You couldn't pay this money to your friend. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, Pute, this 100 rupees is recognized as a liability of your business. Why? Let me explain why. Now, what is today? It is 11th of April. As at this date, do you understand? You have an obligation. There is an obligation, right? And this obligation was created as a result of a past transaction. There is a present obligation generated as a result of a past transaction. And look at this. When you settle this money to your friend, there is an outflow of resources. When you settle this money to your friend, your cash balance is decreased by 100 rupees. So it is a liability. Present obligation generated as a result of a past transaction generates a future outflow of resources at the settlement. Great. Now, let's move to the next slide. Characteristics. I think you know the characteristics already. First characteristic is, it has to be, right? It should be a present obligation. And it has to be a result of a past transaction. And the settlement generates a future outflow of resources. So write these things. These are the characteristics of liabilities. Are we clear? Are we clear, Puta? Right. Let's move to the next one now. Classification of liabilities. Once again, there are two components of two varieties of liabilities. First one is current liabilities. Second is non-current liabilities. Okay, this is how you classify the liabilities. Number one, current liability. Number two, right, non-current liabilities. Now let's see. What are these current liabilities? Current liabilities. Right. Can you all remember the definition of current assets? It is slightly similar to that. Right? Now look at this one. Right. They are the liabilities that should be settled in a short period of time as within 12 months. Now that 100 rupees which was taken by your friend, that should be written once the school is started. So it's a current liability. Now think about a bank loan. Let's say this bank loan is expected or started to be settled after 2 years. After 2 years. Now, this bank loan is not a current asset. Current liability. Right? So, how do you recognize a current liability, Puta? The liabilities that should be settled in a short period of time. Okay? Let's write down some examples. Examples right? Give me a minute. Current liabilities. Do we have examples here? All right. Yes, current liabilities. Examples. Right? Pute. Let me write down some examples of current liabilities. Medical yaganna may be first one. Right? First one. Creditors. Creditors. Current liability. Okay. And then Puta, there is another, right, current liability. I think you have heard of this. I'm going to teach that to you. That is called as Puta, bank overdraft. bank overdraft a current liability. Harida. Not only that, any payables current liability, and advances මේ ටික කටපාඩම් කරලා තියාගන්නකෝ. Advances received, another current liabilities. And do you know, right now we don't use this word much. These current liabilities are also called as short-term liabilities, but the advanced term is this current liabilities. Now, what is a current liability? A liability which has to be settled in the next year, settled in a short period of time. Write this definition and after the examples. Okay, Puta? Great. Now let's see, what does it mean by non-current liabilities? Puta, arra wagema thamai puta. What we should do is, right, just add this word not. Now read it. The liabilities which are not expected to be settled in a short period of time, that means within 12 months. Harida, they are also termed, now we don't use this word much, but remember, these also called as long-term liabilities. But the most advanced word is, try to always use this word, non-current liabilities. Examples මොනවද? ආගන්න. First one, bank loan. Bank loans. Ek non-current liability එකක්. Right? Not only that, any other long-term loans. Okay, now these are the items which have to be recognized as non-current liabilities. පුතාට තේරුණාද මේ කරපු ටික? Current assets, non-current assets. Any doubts, Puta? Can I get a small feedback? Do you understand this? මේක තේරුණාද පුතේ? Oshani, Binon Pereira, Duniti, Netmi, Onita, Resen Fernando, Sean, Shenuk, Vibu. තේරුණාද මම මේ කියපු දේවල් පුතේ? Right, great. නියමයි. පුතේ දැක්කද? Definitions හරිම ලේසි. එකක් පාඩම් කරගත්තොත් අනිත් ඒවා පුළුවන්. හැබැයි අපි දැන් අපිට මේ නිවාඩුවක් ඕනේ නැහැ නේද? සිංහල වරුදු කියලා අද තමයි නිවාඩු දෙන්නම තිබ්බ දවස. Do you want a holiday? Shenuk? Duniti, එහෙම liabilities නැහැ. ඒ කතා කරන්න පුතා. Look at this. That is for the businesses, right? There is a limited liability of a business and unlimited liability of a business. Now, this is accounting. Okay, Duniti, don't mix them up. There are limited liability businesses and unlimited liability businesses, but this liability is for accounting. Shenuk, තේරුණාද පුතේ? Shenuk, Vibu, can I get a small feedback from you both? And Sean, apne alut puta? Do you understand? Right, perfect. Right. Hari. Now we are moving to the next characteristic. Api ළඟ එකට යනවා. In fact, to the next type of account. That is equity. Right? Pute, equity is defined like this. Right? Equity of a business is defined as the value of the assets that belongs to the owners. මම පොඩි දෙයක් කියන්නද? මෙන්න මෙහෙමයි පුතා business එකක assets හැදෙන්නේ. Let's say, right? Now look at this. A business has, right? Look at this. A business has assets valued rupees 500,000. This is the value of the assets. Do you know, right? These assets have been provided to the business most of the time by two sources. First one is, right, by the owners. Some of the assets financed by the owners. And some assets have been financed by others or external parties. Okay. Let's give few numbers to this. Out of this 500 puta, right? Others have financed 150,000 worth assets. Out of this 500,000, others have financed assets worth 150,000. Pute cannot guess the number. I'm asking, what is the value of the assets which have been financed by the owners? Can someone tell me the answer? Lazy. How much is it? Can't guess. This is the total assets which belongs to a business. I told you, no, they have to be either financed by the owners or by the others. Let's give a number. Out of these assets, right, 150,000 worth assets have been financed by others, external parties. It's a small calculation. What comes here? Oh, what is the number of assets which have been financed by the owner? I need the number. Value vekiyada harima lesi. Shenuk exactly. Duniti niyamai. How much is it? Puta mechara inti inni. 350,000. Do you understand? So the addition of these two becomes 500. In accounting, we use, right, number of words here. Api mekada tama kiyanne what? Liabilities. And this is what we called as equity. Terunada puta. Liabilities, equity. Now, what is this? It is the value of the assets which is financed by the owner. Value of the assets that belongs to the owners is called as equity. Look at the next definition. Residual value of assets after deducting the liabilities of the business. That means, now what is the total assets we have? 500,000. What is the liabilities? 150,000. Here you have your equity, 350,000. Residual value of the assets after deducting the liabilities of the business. See how simple this subject is. Right? So, but to get an A pass, there should be a commitment in every child, every student. Otherwise, we can't do it. Trust me. Great. Let's move to the next definition. We are moving to the next definition. Income. Income. Then make a explain karan issarhadi, right? Not today. But you have to learn this by heart. Today, you can't understand this anyway. But according to the syllabus, this should be introduced at this point. Income can be defined as, right, an increase in equity, as an increase in equity, except that increase was influenced by the owner. We have a very beautiful lesson called double entry system after 2 lessons. There I'm going to explain the income in details, but for the moment, learn this by heart. Something important. I told you, we have to learn a lot of new words. Additional capital is not recognized as income. Do you know the reason? Additional capital is something which is influenced by the owner. Therefore, additional capital is not considered as income. Right? Not only that, income belongs to the owners. Remember, main income එක අයිති කාටද පුතා? Income belongs to the owners. Therefore, income should be added to the equity. So, remember these key points. Okay, great. Now, this is how you define income. But according to the syllabus, this should be introduced to you. Okay, great. Let's move to, right, the next slide, that is expenses. Expenses, right? It is similar to the income definition of the income, but there are some changes, right? Quite powerful changes. I told you income is increase in equity, but expenses, do you see this one, Puta? Expense is a decrease in equity, except that decrease was influenced by the owner. Based on this definition, this one, drawings, I'm going to explain it. Drawings is not recognized as expenses. Do you know the reason? Because drawings is influenced by the owner. Okay? And it says expenses should be borne by the owners. Therefore, they have to be deducted from the equity. පුතා මේ දෙක සමාන වචන දෙකක් නෙමෙයි, but for the moment you can use it. Capital is not equity, but in all levels it's all right. You can say capital or equity. Anyway, income should be added to the equity, expenses should be deducted from the equity. අද homework එකක් තියෙනවා ඔයාලට. හරි? ඒ තමයි ඉතුරු activities ටික. ඉන්නකො මම අන්තිම එකත් ඔයාලට කියලා දෙන්න. The last point. මම මේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් අහනවා. How to calculate the profit of a business? Profit calculation of profit is very simple. You can recognize the profit of a business, right, by subtracting expenses, right? Expenses from income. Therefore, profit equals income, right? Income minus expenses. This is how you can calculate the profit of a business. පැහැදිලිද පුතා? ඔන්න බලන්න අපි අද දවසේදී කරපු දේවල් ටික. හරි? I'm taking you to the right tutorial. මේ බලන්න පුතා. හොඳට අහගන්න. Right? Introduction to accounting. We have all these things, right? All these things are available, right? On definition of equity, right? මෙන්න මෙතනට මේ උත්තර ටික ලියා ගන්න ඕන. What are the factors which change the equity of a business? There are few factors. පුතේ ඒව තමයි මේව ලියා ගන්න මෙතන. Right? First one, first factor, income. Income changes equity. Second, expenses changes equity. And the next is additional capital changes the equity. And finally, drawings. Drawings changes in equity. Okay. So these are the 4 things which change the equity of a business. And out of these, right, 2 things increases equity. ඒ තමයි පුතා මෙන්න මේකට උත්තරේ. Income and additional capital. Right? Both of these things increases the equity. Then can all guess what decreases? මට උත්තර දෙන්න බලන්න. What decreases the equity? Duniti. Duniti? Onita? Netmi? Anyone in the class? Yes, Duniti, very good. What is it? Expenses and drawings. At least learn them by heart for the moment. These are the 4 things which changes equity. 2 of them increases the equity. 2 of them decreases the equity. Got it? Now, let's move to, I'm going to erase this. You can watch this medical presentation in Balagan. Right? Now I'm taking you to the last one. Definition of income is written. Examples. Good examples then put income. Medical yagan. Right? Examples of income. Number of things can be given. Examples of income. Right? First, medical yagan. Sales. Sales income. Commissions received. Commissions received. And then we can recognize after commissions received, rent received. Examples of income. Discounts received. Discounts received. Interest received. Interest received. Dividends received. Dividends received. Within examples of income. See, all these things are received. Right, Pute? Sorry, I mean definitions of current liabilities. Mami වැරදි දැනක ලිව්වේ හොඳේ. මේ ටික යනවා definitions of මේ තියෙන්නේ definitions of income. Okay, බලන්න definitions of examples of income තියෙනවද කියලා බලන්න. Extremely sorry. Examples of income තියෙනවද? මේ තියෙන පුතේ මෙතන ලියන්න ඕනේ. ඒ ටික ලියන්න ඕන මෙතන. Definition of income, examples of income. They should be written here. Then examples of expenses. මොනවද අපිට තියෙන examples? මේ තියෙන පුතා ගොඩක් දේවල් තියෙනවා. ආගන්න. Purchases. Expense. Rent paid. Not rent received, okay? Rent paid. Salaries. Right? Insurance. Right? Think about your own houses, electricity bill, right? Water bill, right? So these are the examples of මේකත් යනවා මෙතනට. Examples of expenses. Okay. These are the examples of expenses, right? These are the examples of expenses, right? All these things should comes here. Examples of expenses. Incomes මෙතනට මොනවද යන්නේ පුතේ? But you're right here. You're right. Sales, commissions received, rent received, dividends received, discounts received. Puta, they have to be written here. They are the examples of income. Rent, purchases, salaries, they should be written as the examples of expenses. Are we clear? Right. So remember this. This is how you have to calculate. You can calculate the profit of the business. Income minus expenses. So this is going to be the homework. And the answers for these are discussed on the next week. Okay. Now I have given you number of examples for the items. Based on them, you have to recognize the category. For an example, sales කියන්නේ මොකක්ද පුතා? What is the category of sales? මෙතන මොකක්ද අපි ලියන්න ඕන? Sales කියන්නේ මොන category එකක්ද? Sales, you have to say, okay, I know the sales. Sales is an income. Purchases, expense. Carriage inwards, expenses. Import duties, expenses. මම inventory කෙනෙක් කිව්වා. ඒක මොකක්ද අපිට? It is an asset. So likewise, sometimes it might be a little complicated, but try your best to recognize the category of these ledger accounts. It is going to be a homework for you. Right? And then, පුතා, අද ටිකක් homework ටිකක් වැඩි දවසක්. හරිද? You have to recognize whether these statements are true or false. Okay? හොඳට අපි ගිය සතියේ කරපු දෙලුත් මේක මෙතන තියෙනවා. හරිද? ඒ වයින් බලලා බලන්න. You have to go and check whether these statements are true or false. If it is true, you're right true. For පළවෙනි එක බලමු. Accounting is considered as an input-output process. What is your answer? Is it true or false? කියලා බලන්න ළමයි. මම ගිය සතියේ කිව්වා. Accounting, is it an input-output process? Of course, yes. True. It is true. Yes, Duniti, very good. Huh? Next is, accounting can produce all the information related to a business. Yes or no? Can accounting produce all the information required? No. It can't produce. It is false. Very good. Huh? It is false. Right? You can't produce all the information required. Only the financial information can be provided. So, right now, a test. So after this class, Puta, you have to go through, write all these questions and you have to write the answers. Relevant answers should be written. Tavatina Puta, write activities keepyak. So you have to answer these. So the answers for these questions will be discussed definitely on the next week. So please make sure that you answer all these activities. Okay then. This is the end of the second session. Last week I gave you some outcomes of transactions. Assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses. Today, we define them, describe them. We recognize the characteristics. We classified them. We recognized examples. See how powerful today's session is. So, I'm going to send this recording right after the class. I have another class to be conducted now. So after that, we will write, I'm going to send this to a recording. So you can go through it throughout the month of April, get the valuable information and complete the tutorial. And again, my advice is use number of colors and do the revising again and again. Okay, then that's all for today. Until we meet again on next week, stay safe and may God bless you. And Puta, මයික සිංහලෙන්ම කියන්නම්කෝ. මේ ලබන සිංහල අවුරුද්ද අපි හැමෝගෙම දෙයක්. The Catholics, because we all are Sinhalese, right? අපි හැමෝටම මේක අයිති මතක තියාගන්න. සිංහල අවුරුද්ද. We all are Sri Lankans. Okay? It's a national right. It's a tradition. We all are part of it. හරිද? මමත් Catholic, but I really love this particular period. Right? So, wish you all a very happy Sinhala and Hindu Alut Aurudda. Okay? Thank you very much. Until we meet again on next week, stay safe and may God bless you. Thank you so much for your participation. God bless you.